So chances are, since you've clicked on this video, that you're like me. You have a problem with overthinking. Problem meaning that you don't like that you do it and you would like to correct it. If this isn't you, you're probably in the wrong spot and you should slowly exit. But for everyone else that is still here, overthinking is ruining my life. And it's probably ruining yours too. Well, what if it didn't have to be this way? What if we could figure out a practical approach to eliminate overthinking once and for all? Well, Google defines to overthink as to think about something too much or for too long, while Webster Dictionary says something similar, to put too much time into thinking about or analyzing where it's no longer productive. But while I can't define it, I would describe it as either a constant inner dialogue that kind of just dwells on all of my problems, or my girlfriend's face whenever I ask her where she'd like to eat. But regardless of how you might personally define overthinking, it's safe to say that almost everyone in the world has experienced it for themselves. In fact, the first appearance of this word was in 1624, and it was used in the exact same way that it is today. However, popularity in the word has skyrocketed as we've entered the digital age, where knowledge is endless, but wisdom is rare. So why, as humans, do we happen to have such an innate problem with overthinking? And is there any practical approach to actually overcome it? So I just sat down to try to actually answer this question, and what I've found is absolutely startling. You have 8 steps to stop overthinking everything, or 10 simple ways you can stop yourself from overthinking tomorrow. Keep it simple. 14 techniques to stop overthinking. I mean, it's crazy, but every single article on the internet about how to stop overthinking only leads back to more overthinking. And then I realized that the act of trying to look up how to cure overthinking can actually be a form of overthinking in itself. There's so many different answers, so many methods. Which is the right one? How do you know which is the right one? What if you choose the wrong one? So you can see the intrinsic problem we have as humans when it comes to how we deal with overthinking. How do we ever escape this? So that's actually when I started overthinking and realized that overthinking could actually be broken down into 2 parts. Over, meaning beyond or above, and thinking, meaning to engage the brain to complete a certain task or action. Thus, overthinking must be the act of using the brain past where is needed to solve a problem, or thinking about things that we can't act on, aka in the past or the future. Yeah, well, it's pretty obvious that we need a new system. So I dared to go where no man has ever been brave enough to venture, the long-forgotten bookshelf here in our home. I started reading book after book after book, trying to figure out any practical method to actually stop overthinking. And then, in the pages of a never-opened copy of The Power of Now, I landed on this quote: "Focus your attention on the now and tell me what problems you have at this moment." And I thought, well, that's easy. I have to pay my bills. My dogs are getting older. I'm worried about my health declining. I've got tons of baggage from my past. And on top of all of that, what if I never actually make another YouTube video again? Which I'm sorry about. I've just been dramatically overthinking it. And then I realized it didn't say in the future, it said in this moment. And I thought about that, and I realized that if I was having a real serious problem in this moment, like a heart attack, or my dog's getting sick, or not being able to pay my bill that's due today, I would actually be busy dealing with that. I wouldn't be sitting here worrying about it, thinking about it, or definitely making this YouTube video. I would be busy in fight or flight, actually dealing with the problem. So maybe this book wasn't wrong. Maybe all of the problems that were in my head were actually just in the future, even if by a couple seconds. The next part of the book suggested that we actually create overthinking and suffering by constantly referring to our past and obsessively worrying about our future, which pissed me off to my core because it was pretty accurate. It said to simply remove time from the mind and it stops unless you choose to use it. And if you no longer want to create pain for yourself, then don't create any more time. At least no more time than is needed to deal with the practical aspects of your life. Like, I'll meet you tomorrow at 3. You still got to deal with that kind of time. But for some reason, and I don't know why, this little section resonated with me so much. I reread that book twice in 48 hours, and I had to know. I had to know if these words that had captivated me, if there was actually magic behind them, or if they were just written magically. I had to know. So that's when I decided to stop talking about my past or referring to my future for an entire month and just see how it went. In all honesty, I caught myself last night trying to justify why I actually do need pain in my life, why I need it to make sure I achieve my goals or remember not to touch a hot stove. And like, this is the mentality that has led me to this point in my life. So like, I know this is not going to be easy, but that is proof enough that like I have to push on and I have to actually try to change my thought process because it's obviously changing me. So the first 3 days, nothing really changed, to be honest. I just started becoming aware of exactly how frequent it was that I was talking about my future or subtly referring to my past. I actually had really no clue, and once I realized I was doing it, it became very annoying to try to ignore. Like seriously, almost everything that came into my mind that I was worrying about was in the future, even if just by like an hour or so. After like 72 hours of pretty much having to stop every sentence that went to leave my mouth, I had to make a decision that now I was aware of it, I had to actually do something about it. For the rest of the first week, I pretty much said nothing. I just sat in the corner waiting to contribute to conversations, only to realize I really had nothing to contribute that wasn't about the future or referring to the past. So for the first time, and as long as I can remember, I shut up. Against my will. Now, this is where things got interesting, but also kind of dark. I spent the first half of the second week like attacking everyone else's usage of time. It was equally as unhealthy. My mom would ask what I was doing next week, and I would feel myself die a little inside. My friends and my girlfriend would constantly bring up their past in an effort to keep their pain alive. And at first, it became super overwhelming because I felt like I had to stop everyone else's usage of time in order for me to stop using mine. But the more I became aware of this behavior in others, the more it was apparent that I really had to push on, and I had to see if I could release myself from this torture. It was a hard realization for me that trying to change others was actually a desperate attempt to distract from having to change myself, the only unchangeable person that I knew in the room. Now, by no means was this easy. This was actually one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life because every single time I caught myself thinking about the past or the future in my mind, I had to make a decision in that exact moment. Am I going to correct this? Or am I just going to keep excusing it like I always have? My brain, even though I had decided that I wanted to do this, my brain was trying so hard to get me to deem it stupid and just quit. So I knew I couldn't. Then something kind of cool started to happen. Because I was becoming aware of my desire to talk about my past and future before I actually spoke it, I finally had a chance to not act on it. And with every decision to not act on the desire to say it, I started to feel good. I started to feel a little bit of pride inside that I was starting to respect myself. What I found were all these unresolved issues from my life and childhood that were never addressed. The things that I had suppressed along with all my fears and anxieties about the future. Also, the fact that I'm slowly starting to resemble Jesus, which everyone has assured me is not a bad thing, but I honestly don't know still how I feel about it. I had become aware of all the real issues in my life. And as I had read many times in self-help books before but never really understood, I finally had the opportunity to let them go as they naturally came up. In the third week, having realized I had nothing to talk about, I just kind of naturally started to look around, watching birds and listening to the sounds of nature. I started looking at weird things like the grains of a wood table or the structure of a flower. I didn't really know what it meant, but my brain had kind of surrendered to the idea of resisting life. The fourth week is actually where I saw the most benefit. Since the voice in my head had stopped constantly worrying about everything that could possibly happen to me, or I had just stopped listening to it, I'm not quite sure which. It doesn't matter. But I was just kind of empty and super interested into what people had to say. And if you know me, that is kind of a big deal and a massive shock because everything that's in my mind was usually deemed more important than what other people had to say to me. And now I can see the absolute idiocracy of that. But something really strange had started happening all the time. I would just find myself sitting and enjoying everything, regardless of what it was I was doing, simply because I was now doing it without all of my inner crap. Like, it sounds super cheesy to say, but it felt like being a kid again without any desire to be a kid again. It had become very apparent that my brain was the actual problem and not my perceived problems themselves. The paradox of overthinking is that instead of leading to any actual thought, it actually prevents it. There was this obvious flaw with the human brain. If I asked you a question and you gave me an answer, my brain would naturally come up with 2 more questions in the pursuit of fully understanding. This is the greatest strength and flaw of the human brain, and it's the reason that we cannot stop overthinking. And this isn't our fault. Our brains are good at one thing and one thing only. They're problem-solving machines. And they were very useful when we had to solve life-threatening problems for ourselves, such as food, water, sex, shelter. But now most of those basic human needs are covered to some extent in Western society. And this is a huge problem for you because now your brain switches from these important tasks to every little minute detail of your life. The brain starts to make problems out of normal life because that's just what it does. It finds problems in an attempt to solve them. Then one night after dinner, while I was washing my hands, I realized that this was actually the first time I had ever truly washed my hands with 100% of my attention. There was no overthinking or honestly thinking at all. I could smell the fragrance of the soap, feel the bubbles, and just enjoy the process of simply washing my hands. And just like that, I had realized that my overthinking had simply ceased. So good for me, right? This isn't meant to be like some magical motivational speech to cure you of overthinking instantly, or to get you to move to some Buddhist temple in the mountains and just dedicate your life to meditation. However, what I have learned in my now 7 weeks of this practice is this: you cannot think your way to less thinking, although you will try. And secondly, if we can just learn to be present and in the moment, overthinking just ceases to be as a byproduct. Trust in the fact that when the building is on fire, you will know to run, but you will no longer sit around wondering if the building is one day going to catch on fire. That is the difference, and it is a difference that will change your life. And you can use the technique that I used in this video to see for yourself if this method will help you. I know it doesn't really seem like overthinking and talking about your past and future are linked, but in my own experience of this video, I really hope you try it because there's something here. And if you have anything to build on it, please leave it in the comments. I will be more than happy to try it, as well as most of the people in this now growing community. So for those of you who have made it this far, I really do hope this video helps you. And if you want to see me make any more of these videos, please make sure to let me know in the comments, as well as give it a like and subscribe. It helps make sure that these videos actually find the people who need them. And other than that, I'll see you guys on the other side. Peace.